So welcome to IDD Talks and welcome to Karabakh.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here again as a frequent visitor of the forums organized by the other university and by other organizations, and it is always a pleasure to come.
Thank you very much. So you yourself could observe the peace process negotiation between Armenia and Azerbaijan since the end of the war in 2020. And now there is a real chance, a real opportunity for two countries finally to sign the peace agreement, because all of the points in the peace agreement have been negotiated and agreed. Therefore, what is your vision of the current situation and your expectations?
Now I see more chances for the finalization of the peace talks and to make the peace for a few reasons. From one hand, now Europe has its own problems, so the main powers of Europe are not so much taking care of their, let's call, allies in the region. I mean, France seems to be not so busy with Armenian issues, and probably and most likely it will help the dialogue of the two countries. For the first time in the peace talks history, Armenia and Azerbaijan started to talk with each other directly without mediators, which is a huge result, I have to say. And I'm sure that these negotiations will have a result, even if not a sudden peace, but let's say a step-by-step realized peace is absolutely possible. And the other issue is that the geopolitics, I mean the macro level of the geopolitics, let's say the middle corridor issues, the north-south transportation issues, Russia's interest, US interest, these different geopolitical movements are pushing Armenia towards the peace. I think Armenians already realize that without peace they cannot, in fact, survive, let's say, or at least they would remain in the same very poor situation, landlocked, and surrounded by their let's say, enemies, and it is not a very prosperous future. While if they would make the peace and they would be integrated into these flows, I mean the trade and infrastructure development issues, they could gain a lot. They could gain a lot, and if the economy performs well, and in this case, and if the people are living well, in this case, these nationalism issues are not so important anymore. We can see based on the European history as well, let's say the German-French conflict.
Correct me if I'm mistaken. Yeah. Previously, Europe was most concentrated on the issues like human rights. They preferred to criticize the small countries, and they had this, let's say, acceptance and the perception that the global war should be led by the global powers. But the situation has been changed since the time of Donald Trump initiated his new tariff plan. What we see today, just recently in Samarkand, there was a first in history EU Central Asia summit, where the European Union countries expressed a willingness to see more intensive development in between. And now you're telling me that Europe is more interested in development of linkages between East and West, concentrating on energy. What has changed?
Europe realized that the EU is weak and EU is not a power anymore. Until the point when the US Democrats let's say, supported Europe in several ways, especially in military and weapon terms. Until that point in the past, they were thinking that US and Europe will be always together, and if anything will happen, the US will be in the back. Trump came and he told, no, there is no free lunch. So if you do not, and if you don't do your best for protecting your continent, then we want to protect you. So the EU realized that probably it is much more important to to start to think about strategic issues rather than about gender balance and gender change and LGBTQ and liberal democratic issues and so on. For sure, the competitiveness of Europe is declining. And to maintain or to keep at this level what we are having now, we need energy sources. And for that, and also at the end of the day, the Chinese parts and the Chinese goods. And at the end of the day, that is why the European Union announced again, because last year they announced already this 12.5 billion budget for the middle corridor investment issues. And the green energy, and for that one, you know, for our joint project with Azerbaijan, I mean Central Europe and Azerbaijan, we were very, very heavily criticized that it is not sustainable. And now we see that already Central Asia tries to catch up and to be connected to this power grid. And now Western Europe is interested already, or at least it is not so heavily criticized. So it is very clear that what we, I mean Azerbaijan and Hungary, said in the past 15 years, that was the reality, and that was the future. And now the mainstream Europe started to realize that yes, they have to be in the region. They have to offer something which is more than the democratic institutions and LGBTQ propaganda and so on, but based on interest and mutual interests. And this is an issue. And however, you know, despite, I don't think that the EU will be a strong player in this region. The region's countries, including Azerbaijan and also Georgia and also Central Asia, they will use Europe for their own purposes. But I do not think that.
Change the place.
Yeah, I do not think that the EU couldn't force or couldn't ask or couldn't push anything in this region, because here the big players are Russia, China, and the middle powers like Turkey, even Iran, or let's say somehow India. They don't care about Europe anymore because the Western values are not important here. And the West is still thinking that this region is seeking for the Western value.
The same style cannot be assigned for every single state. And one more question about the position of Hungary. I do remember Hungary has been criticized many times from different corners of Europe for not supporting sanctions against Russia, for example, or sanctions against Georgia since the time of the last political crisis there. Therefore, does your country feel that there is a real change now?
Unfortunately, we cannot see any signs of changing the situation. We know that we are right, and we did our best, and we also always expressed our opposition interest in this regard. And it seems that Hungary is the only one out of the EU member countries who still tries to think like real and about the reality and the real situation. Brussels and the Brussels bureaucracy is still in a bubble. So they just not realize the realities, the real situation, and still the Council of Europe and the Commission tries to do decisions where only Hungary is against. So in this regard, we expected to change, especially because of the situation in the United States, and especially because of the situation that
there were a lot of expectations from Donald Trump in Hungary,
and that Donald Trump and Viktor Orban, our Prime Minister, are really good friends. So now the best relations to among the European leaders, Viktor Orban has to Trump. They are talking with each other quite frequently by phone, without any diplomatic channels. So we expected that Europe will realize that Viktor Orban can be a focal point, a contact point, instead of a black
the
sheep
future
still.
negotiations in between.
But they don't care about these realities, and they still try. You know, the US told, okay, we are not supporting Ukraine anymore if certain steps won't be taken. And what Europe said, okay, if the US doesn't give enough source for the weapons and for the war, we will collect it and we will provide them. So it is absolutely surrealistic approach, and Europe has now more money. Europe is now more competitive because of the sanctions and because of the Ukrainian issue, which should be solved with finally. And we shouldn't heat the war, but we should make the peace. It would be the interest of whole Europe or of the whole world.
Yes, indeed. So we wish you good luck and thank you so much for joining our discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.